Welcome, friends, to Hebrew Nation and Bride of Christ podcasts. We have been looking at themes that fit the wedding parables. And let me turn this volume down just a little bit so I don't hear the echo in my ear so strongly. That should do it. Um, Thank you for being with us from time to time. Pray that God will help us to understand what He has in the seven seals, which are topics that are contextually linked in Revelation's 6th chapter to doctrines and teachings that need to be restored. We know that Yeshua said that before he comes, Elijah must come first and restore all things. That's Matthew 17:11. And if we look at Malachi 4:4 and 5, we find that he comes in the context of the law. Remember the law of Moses with the statutes and judgments. Behold, I send you Elijah. Those statutes and judgments have a sevenfold emphasis in Ezekiel 20, verses 11 to 24. And so I'm seeing that a sevenfold emphasis is a mark of end time truth and will identify those topics that we need to restore, just like you see seven churches, seven seals, seven trumpets in Revelation or thunders. Why, we need the seals, okay? And we've discussed some of them. We were last week talking about the Sabbaths, the fourth horse, the pale horse, which I believe the disease that came during the Dark Ages with the papal reign is suggestive of topics that the papacy sought to get rid of. They boast that they abolished the Jewish feast days and the Sabbath, etc. And we were looking at the calendar change last time too, but ran out of time. We recognize that they changed the seventh-day Sabbath to Sunday because Constantine was a sun worshiper, Rosicrucian, and he did the edict of Constantine, and the Pope blessed it and figured a way to make it holy by the fact that Christ rose from the grave on Sunday. Even though there's no reference to doing so in the book of Acts, but there is one reference to the first day of the week. But there are 9 references to Sabbath in the book of Acts, and 3 of them say every Sabbath. So it doesn't sound like the custom was to just do the Lord's resurrection and honor it for worship. The day that he was speaking, he spoke till midnight and then left on the first day of the week, etc. So that's not the basis for keeping Sunday and abolishing Sabbath. Okay, we also talked about the feast days. They are supported by those statutes and judgments in Leviticus 23rd chapter, and the last verse says they are moed, appointed times. These appointed times are our appointments, okay? And we should be watching and ready because this year is huge significance. But I just heard Bill Sanford talking and about, Passover, etc. I am seeing a 9/11 warning by Yeshua pointing to Numbers 9, verse 10 and 11, for a provision for Passover a month later. There are 2 reasons for doing this, and when Christ, Yeshua, said, no man knows the day or hour, that sentence ends with, but as the days of Noah. And in Noah's time, the flood came as a judgment with Passover timing, but in the second spring month. So we should be heads up. I'm believing that Christ, who was the master in Matthew 25, he took the long journey to heaven. That's another reason for second Passover in May. Yeah, if an Israelite took a long trip and couldn't get back in time to Jerusalem for Passover, they were not excused. Passover meant judgment. We all have to face it and observe it in the second month. That's Numbers 9, verse 10 and 11. A 9/11 warning for us. God knows how to get our attention with those numbers even. I know that wasn't thought to be inspired, but I think God did inspire some of them. So I'm seeing next month, I'm looking forward to observing Passover. And it's unique with the fact that May 19, I believe God marked it when in May 19, 1780, there was an unexplainably dark day. You can even Google it, dark day, Google, and you'll see that it was May 19. Not an eclipse, not fires with lots of smoke or something that they would have smelled. It was unexplainably dark. Cows came in from the field, chickens went to roost, people used lamps in midday to read a newspaper. So why is that unique to us? First of all, Christians in New England thought Christ was coming, but 200 years later, that dark day repeated when Mount St. Helens erupted and put ash into the sky, and wind over the night took the ashes over 3 northwestern states and darkened them, just like the first one was in the northeast. The point is that I think that is such an amazing coincidence to happen on May 19, 1780, May 19, 1980, that it couldn't have just been an odd coincidence. I believe God was marking it because the people, the evangelicals that follow the Gregorian calendar need a heads up, and this is their way to find out that May 19 this year, not every year, because the papal Gregorian calendar has no relationship between new moon and new month. The new moon can be in the first of the month, the middle of the month, the end of the month. Crazy. It doesn't mark. New moon doesn't mean new mark to the Pope. Okay. Well, it does to God and to Moses in Exodus 12, verse 2 and 3. And in the verse 3, on the 10th day, they were set aside a sacrifice for Passover. And this year, that 10th day, when Noah entered the ark in Genesis 7th chapter, happens to fall on May 19. Will it be a dark day? I don't know, really. It might be from a EMP attack of our power grid. I heard a Jonathan Hollerman saying, he's Deputy Director of Homeland Security, and he was telling how amazed he was that we haven't had a power grid attack. It should be so easy with a high-altitude explosion of a nuclear blast, maybe over Kansas City, Midwest somewhere, doesn't matter really, but it could knock out the transformers coast to coast, and we could have not only a dark day, but dark months and a dark year. Because Hollerman said at the end of a year, there would estimated be only 10% alive living in cities, because without electricity, truckers couldn't pump fuel into their trucks, and people would starve. Gangs would roam the streets trying to find out where there's food and take it. Not a good place. God didn't intend for people to live in cities really as they do now, and they're hotbeds of vice and wickedness and bad stuff, violence. The very first city was built by Cain, the first murderer, okay? And God put man in a garden. The question is, are we learning our lessons from the garden? In the sweat of our brow, we're supposed to earn bread. I have to admit I haven't done that very much, but I believe we're coming to fierce times when we need to learn some of those garden lessons. And so I'm just saying, please consider May 19 this year. You may want to take a week's vacation, get out into the country, look for some property, look for a farmer. Maybe you can rent a room from him. At the end of the week, when Noah went into the ark, the flood started. The windows of heaven opened, the fountains of the deep broke up, and people were banging on the door wanting in to help Noah. I'm not sure how this is going to play out this year, but I believe that before that, May 19, Muslims are going to take Jerusalem. They will. They're wanting to. They've said they do. President Erdogan of Turkey said, it's our city. It was part of the Ottoman Empire. And he urged 57 Muslim nations to siege Israel. Not good, basically. They have no rights from God's perspective, but neither do the Jews there in Jerusalem. We think it's a miracle that the Jews came back, but let me explain. In Leviticus, the 26th chapter, God said, if you walk contrary to me, I'll punish you 7 times over. And in Ezekiel 4, verse 4 and 5, or 5 and 6, it says, Ezekiel's asked to lie on his side 390 days, each day for a year that Israel was in apostasy. Well, they did walk contrary then. 390 years, and 7 times over would be 7 times 390, 2,730 years. They were to be in exile. They were not free to return when the UN gave them land. That 2,730 period of time, if you subtract when Sennacherib came in 722 BC to knock on the door of Jerusalem and ask them to surrender, and he took them captive, actually. Subtract 722 from 2730, and it's 2008. The math is easy, but there was no year zero when Messiah was born, so it's 2009 when they should have been free to return. But in that year, the Pope, Benedict, goes to Jerusalem, and he's the sign to flee. Early Christians understood that Rome was a sign to flee, and Christians got out of Jerusalem when Cestius came in 66 BC, so they weren't there around when Titus began his siege. Mothers ate their own babies. It was such a bad siege and famine inside the city. People died of hunger, but not the Christians. Not a Christian lost their life. Well, the Jews couldn't credit it, and they're not crediting Messiah now. But if we pay attention, they could be spared what's coming, I think, later this month, when Muslims, maybe 57 nations, because Zechariah 14 says in 1 and 2, day of the Lord comes, and all nations are gathered against Jerusalem to battle. Houses rifled, women ravished, half the city goes into captivity. Then the Lord will go forth to fight against them. And I believe he'll use an earthquake, because when Muslims celebrate their mosque and the Quran, which says Allah has no son, I believe that the Son, who is the Lion of Judah, is going to roar at that point. Revelation 5:5 shows Messiah as the Lion of Judah, and Amos 3:7 says God isn't going to do anything without revealing it. The Lion has roared. Who will not fear? I believe when the Lord roars, it says in Joel 3:16, he will roar from Jerusalem, the heavens and earth will shake, and they will get out of there, in verse 5 of Zechariah 14. But both of those passages, Zechariah 14 and Joel 3:16, have day of the Lord context, which is a time of judgment. Just as Egypt had judgment on night of the Lord, as day follows night, the end time day of the Lord is going to be like Egypt, when God executed judgment. And as Bill Sanford said, God has a right to punish people at that point if we're not in obedience or conformity. And so pray that God will wake us up and help us understand the times. And I believe that May 19 will be the introduction to second Passover, when the flood came, and I believe this time it'll be an earthquake, but maybe also a flood of people. Okay, maybe the people on the border that want to get in and take advantage of broken stores and broken possessions will show up. It says in Isaiah, I think it's 28 verse 14. I can't tell you the verses, but overflowing scourge is found twice in Isaiah. I think it's the 28th chapter, as I looked it up recently. So anyway, thank you for considering this. We want to get out of the city. Israel was in Goshen, a land suitable for agriculture, and we shouldn't be living in cities at this time. It's God is going to give us an economic collapse anyhow, so we don't need to be in the cities. It's a better place for COVID and other things away from cities anyway. You don't have to wear a mask, etc. Those mandates don't apply to the country. So anyway, want to finish up with this calendar view and say that basically I'm seeing a different calendar than what every seven that the papal calendar does. Seventh-day Adventists that I came away from actually believe it's a series of sevens from creation. But biblical evidence supports differently. We can see it first in the very first use of the word Sabbath. We think that the word Sabbath might be found in Genesis, but it's not there. We know the Sabbath commandment in Exodus 20 has the word Sabbath, but that's not the first use. The first use of a word often has a context, meaning, or understanding, information that we can help understand it better. And in Exodus 16th chapter, Israel comes into the wilderness, and on the 15th day of the month, a second month really, it says that God is talking with Moses. And Moses says, the people are hungry, they want food. And God says, I will give them manna for 6 days, and on the seventh day there'll be no manna. They don't have to go out and work for it. They work on Friday. He doesn't say Friday, it says the sixth day was the preparation day, known in the Bible as preparation. Every other day was just day one, day two, count the numbers. But Friday was a preparation day, Friday as we know it, the sixth day, and the seventh day was Sabbath. And then Sunday was not named Sunday, it was first day of the week again. So that's biblical, and we see that God put the Sabbath, he was talking to Moses on the 15th, and again, when they went out to look for food, Moses said, why are you looking for food? It's the Sabbath day, he tells them. After 6 days of work and gathering manna, on the seventh day they weren't to be gathering. That was verse 21 or 22 or 3 of Exodus 16th chapter. And you can look all through the Bible, you can use a concordance, it's on computers, but you will not find a seventh-day Sabbath linked on any other day but the 8th, 15th, 22nd, or 29th of the month. That's how it was arranged, with the new moon being the start of each month. That's what God set it up as in Exodus 12:2. This is the beginning of the month, he said, and the first month of the year. And the word Kodesh, which means thin crescent of the moon, was 3 times in that verse there, signaling new month, new moon, as the start. And I just this week on Google typed in month. What is a month? Well, it's 4 weeks or 30 days. And I believe when God shakes the heavens and earth, the calendar is going to return from 29.5 days. When it shakes the heavens, I believe it'll be back to 30 for the end time prophecies in Revelation 11th chapter, where 1260 days we get power as God's anointed. It's 3.5 years, exactly 360 times 3.5 years would be 12 months for 1 year, 24 months for 2 years, and a half of a year would be 6 months. And you add them all together, it's 42 months, and it's 1260 days exactly. So we can count them in the end time better, and if you understand what we're talking about. And so there's another reason or two that I want to help you to see, because there are some very smart, intelligent rabbis that know more about this than I do, but they don't see the lunar calendar that I'm seeing. Okay, in fact, the pure woman in Revelation 12:1 is clothed in the light, but she's standing on the moon. What does that mean? She has a lunar understanding. Okay, that's how it plays out. And if you understand John 19th chapter, verse 31, when Christ was in the grave on the Sabbath after he died, I can't remember who said to who, but he said, this is a high day. I guess the Jews were wanting a watch on the tomb, they weren't too, I can't tell you right now with the full context of the verse, but it is the reason Christ was a high day in the tomb is because it was both seventh-day Sabbath and annual Sabbath. Now, the way it is today, a Jew can observe Sabbath on a seventh-day Saturday, but he can observe Passover on a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Monday, whatever. My point is this: that's a false calendar that the Jews are observing today. They think they're going to count from the new moon, and they do, but Sabbaths coincided because of a lunar calendar. And the reason is that twice in Scripture, God would not suffer his Holy One to see corruption. But Martha told Christ, that Lazarus stinketh, it's been 4 days. Well, if there were, as some people think, Christ was in the tomb 3 days and 3 nights in the belly, as Jonah was in the whale, not so, okay? Because Christ would stink on the fourth day, and God would not suffer his Holy One to see corruption. He was crucified on the sixth day, preparation. They put him in the tomb. Friday evening, women hurried home for the Sabbath. They kept the Sabbath, and early Sunday morning was the third day. Okay, that's how he came from the tomb, with not enough to see corruption. So, and God was enforcing the annual Sabbaths with the seventh-day Sabbath on the 15th and the 22nd for Sukkot, which is the Feast of Tabernacles. So that way it isn't an odd situation. It makes perfect sense if you understand it well. So I'm just saying, hey, wake up, consider some things, search and see if it's so. You will not find a seventh-day Sabbath on any other day. I know an Arnold Bowen in Conyers, Georgia, who offered $1,000 to anyone who could find a text with a Sabbath on any other day than the 8th, 15th, or 22nd of the month, etc. Okay, it's in sync with that, because as David was talking to Jonathan, and he said, tomorrow will be the new moon, and I'll be missed at Saul's house if I'm not there. If Saul is angry, it's a bad sign. He wants to get me. But if he's okay with that, then I guess it's all right. So the idea was that new moon time as a social occasion. It was calling people at the end of a month, maybe a one-day vacation or two, depending on Actually, the Sabbath was on the 29th. The 30th day was a day where you could do anything you wanted. You could go to, maybe that's when Saul had it. I really don't know for certain, but it's implying meeting our social needs. Get together once a month. Have a vacation. Do what you want. Have your friends over or something. But it meant, just as God gives us air and water and food for physical needs, and he gives us spiritual needs with his laws, and those laws also protect the marriage and the family. Don't lie, cheat, or steal. That's meeting social needs. Those social needs are also met by fellowship, and one day a month vacation for that is, I think, a beautiful idea. It's not work every day, and then drive to the coast for 2 weeks vacation for a vacation. But this year, I'd say get out of the city for a week's vacation on May 19. So that's just it in a nutshell, because I believe martial law will be coming to cities after the earthquake that will be coming. Thank you very much. We're done with the feast days. We'll discuss a different topic next time. And God bless you. Glad to hear the music today. And pray for this. We need your help. Visit our website, healthhappinessdestiny.com, for more information. You'll see books there, and get one. I think you'll be enlightened. God bless. Thank you. And by the way, the word hallelujah that they're singing means praise to God in every language. Hallel is a praise to Iaua. His name is vowels, Ia-U. All four vowel letters of God's name. Vowels, music, melody. Hallelujah. Bye. We'll see you.